The largest shortcoming of all body kits is how you're going to mount it. A lot of these guys you see shape these body kits on their cars. That's the easy part. Making it actually attach and function properly is weeks and weeks worth of work. They can't create the mounts, or it's beyond their ability. So it's like double side tape and wood screws. And then you run the thing for 2 months on the street and it's sagging and everything's cracking and falling off.
I feel like we haven't done a podcast in 5 years.
5 years.
Even though it's been only a week.
Today's episode of Beat Elvis Down.
Yes. Welcome back to another episode of Modify with TrickFactory Customs. If this is your first time watching, my name is Elvis.
Tim? I'm Rob.
On this episode, we are going to be talking about building body kits yourself, or building a custom body kit yourself.
Sounds easy enough.
I know. Easy as ABC, because it's not easy, and we're going to dive into all of that. But I have made a custom body kit for my Datsun. It looks okay when you squint and stand back from like 30 or 50 feet. Yes. But when you come closer, you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Because when I was building this car, I didn't have any experience building any of it. I didn't know a lot. And the videos or the content that I got it from, or the stuff from, was probably not the best.
I don't know if yours is really a body kit per se, though.
I feel like it, because I made the front bumper, the side
but it's
things,
not really a kit. Like, you attached it and welded it directly to the vehicle.
So to you, a kit is something that you like.
It's like an add-on.
Oh, like rivet on or
Bond
something
on,
like that.
or
Bond on. I feel like regardless, it's a kit.
Like
You're welding. Exactly.
Technically, it's not really a kit per se. Like, it didn't come in a box.
No, it did not.
Like, it's
come
not
in a
an
box.
addition. It's like you straight up modified your car.
Yeah, but
It's irreversible.
True.
I think the definition of kit is like you could take it off at some time.
I don't know. I don't see it that way. No.
Okay.
No. But I don't know. That's what we're gonna talk about. All of that today. We're gonna talk about different materials. If you should do it, if you should not, like what tools you need, all of that stuff, because I'm looking to redo my kit again now that I've been here for a few years, and I'm like starting to see I know what a good kit looks like, because we have a body shop, we do a lot of custom building, and I've just been picking for the most part, because you're going to tell us about that a little bit, but I've been picking Rob's brain on what to go with design wise and all of that. And then now we're going to talk about materials, like what you're looking for, design, all of that, 3D versus not 3D. It's going to be a very comprehensive episode. So buckle up and we're going to get started. So how's it going? You were off last week.
Off.
You were chilling
On the
beach.
Escaped. Yes.
Where did you wander off to?
I ended up going to Mexico for a week.
Oh, how was that? Glorious?
It was very, very chill.
Yeah. You get to take vacations often? I feel like you don't.
It's been 9 years. So other than work trips, this is my first family vacation in 9 years.
That's insane.
So
yeah, you enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah, I got to hang out with the kids and
Did it ever feel like you're like, I'm just sitting doing nothing? Like, I need to be doing something.
I think the transition, like previously I wasn't able to take vacations because I would get so anxious and just FOMO and need to be. But this, I'd say, is probably, maybe it's my age, is the first time that I didn't even think about this place at all. Like, at all. Like, I was excited to come back, but I wasn't concerned about, like, I think this is the first time that I wasn't worried about everybody doing what they're supposed to be doing.
That's pretty awesome.
So that's a good place to be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And did you see any cool cars in Mexico?
Zero.
Nothing?
Absolutely nothing.
Oh, no.
Scooters. Everything else was just complete. I wouldn't even say it's junk. It's just normal.
But what does normal mean? Like just regular modern cars?
Very, very regular modern cars. I didn't even see that many like super like broken down cars. A lot of Toyotas, Renaults, Peugeots.
Oh, I forgot there were
a lot of Volkswagens.
Okay.
But nothing really, like, I think they're starting to get some money there because I didn't really see anything where it's like third world.
Yeah.
Like, everything was pretty decent.
That's pretty awesome.
So,
but that's kind of, I feel like it's kind of sad though, because when I think of going to like a country like Mexico, you were like, yo, Fast and Furious, all the nice like muscle cars, the Chevy Opalas and all of that stuff.
No, I didn't see nothing. I don't think you can have it there, because even where we were staying, it was like probably 8 or 9 minutes of gravel road.
Oh, I see.
Like straight up gravel road. Like there's nothing really paved there. Even a lot of the resorts is just dirt roads into them.
Wow, that's crazy.
So other than like the big ticket resorts, like the really expensive ones, it's the rest of it's just like the roads aren't great.
Oh, okay.
So I saw a lot of motorcycle gangs though.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like scooter gangs. But like, I mean, you'd see a gang of dudes rocking like patches, but it would be like from a scooter to a Harley. Like there was no.
That's good though.
Yeah, it was literally the most inclusive motorcycle gang I've ever seen. So I mean, that part of it was pretty rad.
That's pretty amazing. And Rob, how was your week?
My week was pretty good. I got a chance to work on my car a little bit, in amongst a couple of other little shop projects that we were doing. But yeah, it was good.
Yeah, and
it was also very quiet. It seemed very quiet.
Yeah,
I kind of staged everybody.
How?
To stay away.
Oh.
Like I made sure, I think I did all right at making sure that nobody was going to be harassing everybody and getting prepped. But it's funny because all their customers are like, man, you work too hard. You need to take a vacation. And then I take a vacation. It's like, my car's going to be done before you leave, right? Fuck out of here. No, it's not. You can survive a week. You'll be fine.
So you got some stuff done on your car a little bit.
I did.
Because you've been working on, I feel like
this kind of falls into the topic today.
Oh my gosh, an ongoing project. Like it's been a while, man.
Because I chip away at it a little tiny bit at a time, right? I was working on my daily driver. It's a Porsche 996. My priority level was to get my rear diffuser made. So in my renderings that I've done on my iPad, I drew up a rear diffuser that I wanted to make, and I wanted to make sure that it was like legit, like it's super chassis mounted. It's like everything about it is proper, and it's a hard challenge making something like that, especially on a 911. I noticed like when I was building my diffuser and I was looking at like the divergent angles and all the things that you need to follow and blah blah blah. Being a rear engine, you look at it and you're like, this thing looks so insignificant. Why am I even doing this? Like it's really small. Like when you look at some other cars, like a front engine rear drive car, and they have a whole bunch of space in the back, you get like these really wild looking diffusers that just are super dramatic. On a 911, it's not like that. It's like really small, and it's kind of begs the question, like, am I wasting my time? But I followed through. I had to stick to the plan, you know, and yeah, I made it. So I chose metal as my medium in which to make it from, and because that's what I'm comfortable with.
Aluminium.
And we can dig in, like when we start talking kits and stuff, we'll start talking about material choices, and you know, you'll hear why my choices usually are what they are. Is because of my skill sets. But yeah, I made some progress on my car, so it feels good. I can drive it every single day. I can check a big thing off the list because I accomplished something that, you know, I never thought that I would ever have, but I did it. So
it
feels good.
But that sort of leads into this conversation is what he's done isn't solely for aesthetics. There's functionality to it too. So that should be part of this conversation when creating a body kit. Like, are you making your car better or are you making it worse?
Or are you making it look sick?
Right.
Yes.
You have like, yeah,
there's that. Like, if that's your thing, then that's the honesty part. Like, every time we have a conversation, it's like, be honest. And if you only care for the aesthetics, which is totally fine on a street car.
Yeah, that's
completely fine. But be honest about it and be like, yeah, I don't care if I'm going to go 3 miles an hour slower. It looks sick. And that's all you need to worry about.
Yeah, you have basically 3 main categories when you're thinking body kits, or it's like, is it a street car? Is it for street? Is it for show? Is it for go? You know what I mean? Is it either one of those 3 is going to be the main sort of determining factor at the top of your list? This is why I'm building it. and then you start to make your choices from that. And even material choice fits into categories within that.
Yeah. That's true, because different materials have different weights and different strengths and all of that. For me, when I was making mine, it was purely for style. I just wanted it to look sick, because 280ZX for the factory does not look sick. It has the 80s bumpers from the front and the back that stretch out like literally tables, like you can eat off of them. So I wanted to change that a little bit. And so I didn't know anything else to use. Like, I just, from the videos that I had seen, I'm like, yo, the car's body is metal. I can get a cheap welder from Amazon for $100, and Home Depot sheet metal is cheap. So I got that and used it. The welder was terrible. It's flux core, no gas. Yeah, gasless. You're just like literally just shooting little beads of, it's pretty bad. But it got it on there.
Yeah.
And do not judge my welds. I just hit all of it with a lot of body filler. Like, I feel like I used this whole table that we're sitting worth of body filler, like those little Bondo buckets. Like, I used a lot of Bondo. So that was one choice that I made.
Was that Bondo brand? Should we be looking for sponsorship?
Yeah, literally the Bondo brand. Yeah. So it was not the best. Like, there's, at the shop here, we use a lot of stuff to do stuff like that, of correcting, like using body filler. We use different types and all that, but that was the one I could afford. Everything, my whole body kit was built using Home Depot supplies. That was my goal. But now that I know about fiberglass, because to me, fiberglass was just one thing that was like, oh my God, it was huge. You're working with, Bondo, you're working with chemicals, but I feel like fiberglass for me was more daunting working with that as opposed to metal. So
yeah, it's a unique challenge, right? Like, it's different.
Yeah.
You work with metal. It's pretty rigid. It holds its shape. It's easy to manipulate in a certain way, right?
Yeah.
And then spot welding and tack welding and things, it's on. We're good to go. But like fiberglass, you have to think about it from a completely different perspective as well. Like, it's like a great choice to make, but you have to also think about, how am I going to hold this in a space while I'm creating my shapes? And it's a different way of going about it, right? Yeah. Yes. So, like, Tim, like, you say popsicle sticks, and like, we laugh about it because, it seems very sort of like arts and crafts and sort of DIY-ish, but like, honestly, I still use popsicle sticks and hot glue.
Come on, we've elevated to another level.
Yeah, we use tongue depressors now.
Medical grade tongue depressors.
That sounds so complex. Like, it sounds so.
So like, it has its place. Like, so like in this topic, like there's many sort of different things to help you. You got to decide based on like what your objective is and what your budget is and what it's all about. But yeah, hot glue, tongue depressors.
Yes.
Those things are fantastic tools to use.
So before we dive into the materials and all of that, like fiberglass, carbon fiber, metal, all of that, let's just talk about a little bit of the pros and cons of building your own kit. Why don't you just go buy one? Why do you need to build your own kit?
Well, maybe you don't see anything that you like.
Yeah.
So building your own kit gives you opportunity to create your own design and execute your own design. But a lot of what I see it is people are trying to replicate things that maybe they can't necessarily afford, or they can't personally justify the expense.
How so?
Well, a lot of kits, like even in my car, like I get 100 people like, I'm going to make your kit. And then I haven't seen one done. It's been 4 years. I haven't seen one finished, because then once they realize just how labor intensive it is, it fades away.
But your kit is, you started off with a kit and then you modified your kit, right?
Yeah. So there's pretty much almost none of the original kit is still there. So, I mean, that's a way to go. Like, I would recommend that to a lot of people as a jumping off point. Like, if you buy one of these Duraflex kits, we all know they're horrible. We all know they're garbage, but it gives you a jumping off point. But you're going to know that you need to put a lot of work into it. I would say I would probably do that before starting from scratch.
Yeah, and you know, just the other day, Elvis, you and I were talking about this very topic. about how oftentimes if you can buy something that already exists, you know, maybe it's some really inexpensive knockoff, maybe it's not even for your car, but if you can buy something that already exists and then you just pull out a saber saw or whatever and start cutting it up, you know, tongue depressors, hot glue, and put all of those pieces, we call busting the kit.
Bust it right here.
Yeah.
What, just break it apart into like...
Cut it up, you know, make it, cut it up, put it, and then make it so it like actually attaches to your car in whatever way you can, and then just start connecting the dots from all the little busted up areas that you created.
The busted? Okay, we got to tell the backstory of the busted.
Okay. Go ahead.
Back in our day, we were trying to buy a body kit, but I think before we even had a shop.
Yeah, we were working out of the garage.
Yeah, and we're trying to find this guy, and this guy was the you know, he did all kind of wild shit, so we had to go check out his shop and see if he could help us what we were doing.
Yeah.
So I think I had my Civic at the time, and I wanted a wild body kit.
Civic.
Same
we
as
were doing a Rabbit convertible as well.
Yeah, so we had to go see this guy because he was apparently the guy that could do all this wild stuff, and I think he was Jamaican.
I think so too.
Yeah, he was Jamaican. So we went in there and everything was easy. So I was like, okay, I want to do this. He's like, yeah, man, we just busted here. We're busted here.
I mean, this was a moment in our history that it sticks with you, and so
like everything was easy. We'll just bust it, man. So we ended up doing it, and we actually put this kit because I think it was like 3 inches too wide. We took a kit from a car. I think it was like a Golf and put it on a Rabbit or something. So we ended up having to narrow it. But like, yeah, just leaving from talking to that guy, we're like, yeah, man, well, we just do that. We'll just bust it. But when we went in, we're like, how do we make this smaller? And he just like, it was the easiest thing in the world. We'll just cut it.
Yeah.
And then
you're just like, no, you're going to cut this brand new piece? Are you crazy?
So ever since then, you see in the shop all the time, like these guys get stressed. And I was like, no, just fucking cut it in half. Yeah. Move it in.
That's crazy. Like, that's mind blowing to me because some of these kits that we play with at the shop are expensive. Like, thousands of dollars, and the thought of cutting it up, a perfectly good kit just to fit the idea that you have in your mind is kind of terrifying.
Yeah, no, it is. And that's a real thing. We deal with it on all levels every day. You know, you buy something and you get it right out of the box. It costs you a small fortune, and you're like, well, now I got to change this because it doesn't really work for my needs or whatever. And yeah, that's what you do. You just have to give the cojones a tug
and just send us off.
And just like, here we go.
Oh my goodness.
You got to commit.
That's a good point that you mentioned of just committing. But before you commit, before you fully send it, I feel like you have to have a good idea of where you're going before you get there.
Yeah.
So something that we've been even playing around with redesigning my body kit now is you've been helping me a lot on Sketchbook. It's a free program. It's on your iPad. iPads are cheap. Almost everybody has one.
Yeah.
And so it's a good way to flesh out, or even a pencil and a paper on if you can just draw stuff on a picture or add it to your drawing. And so let's just dive into that a little bit, or talking about that part of like what they call illustrating.
Yeah. A good way sort of getting like a illustrated example.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. If you're talented enough, you can have like a 3D model made.
You can.
But
you have options to get proper rendering.
There's a lot of skilled people out there in the world. Like we were just talking about Ash Thorpe and Color Sponge Carlos, you know, and like there's people out there like that you can commission to design your stuff for you.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of levels to that too. So you can go from Sketchbook to like the stuff that they're doing looks like you can't even tell it's not real.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Is that
so
real?
that leaves literally nothing to the imagination. Then it just comes to the creation part.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that gets the really hard part down. Like, okay, it's designed. This is what I want it to be, but now you actually have to execute it.
Yeah.
Okay. So like now it comes down to your skills, and also your resources, and also the space in which you're going to do it. Like you need to have a proper, like a reasonable, you know, area of workspace to be able to even do this. So like your decisions that you make for materials, however you plan to execute this. If you're doing this outside on the gravel driveway, I don't know.
Rough.
I don't know if you're gonna have a good time. You might want to choose something kind of like more like what you did and use metal and weld. You know, because then you're making quick moves.
Okay, I see. I was gonna.
But if you're 2-part foam and you're carving and you're grinding and you're doing all that and you're doing that outside, it's going to be really messy. And
that's a huge mess.
You know, like these are all part of the equation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because initially I thought about we're still going to go back to design again, but like I thought about using the 2-part foam, expanding foam. But after seeing you, Rob, do the Skylark hood, because we cut a big hole in the Skylark hood to make room for the Wagner V8 that we put in it. That made such a, like, there was stuff everywhere. Like by the time you're sanding that down, oh my gosh.
Yeah, but that is like, that's one of the cons with that choice. But one of the major pros is that you're able to execute a shape really quickly.
Yeah.
And so those are part of the equation. Like how, like that shaping foam is really, really fast.
It's fast.
And
you're going to have a finished, like you can see what you're trying to do in like a day.
Yeah. It's full scale right there for you to like put your hands on. You can look at it from all different angles, different perspectives, and you can see, does this look exactly like what I want it to look like? And here's another the side note benefit from that is if you say remove too much, you can always pour more foam back on it and start over again.
But a little side note to this is the foam that we use is designed specifically for fiberglass. So if you start using those spray can foams, it doesn't work. Like you have to tape it and you got to protect it and then apply your fiberglass over top. The stuff that we use, we can basically go directly to fiberglass. So it's more expensive, but the benefit to it is like it's ready to work in like a half an hour.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of these spray foam ones, it's like 48 hours before you can start cutting and shaving and doing stuff.
Yeah, like if you go to your Home Depot or Rona, whatever, and you buy, say, the Mono brand, you know, aerosol expanding foam, that stuff is crap.
The expense
don't do it.
Probably comparable. It's just the cost of investment is higher with the stuff that we use.
Yeah,
and you got to know like where you're getting it from too, right?
So you might have to spend $500 or $600, but if you start buying those spray cans at $35 a can, you're going to end up there anyways.
Yeah.
So here's the thing about foam that, like, you know, is really, really important to note is like the expanding foam comes in different like weights of density. Okay, like if you get like something that's say 2 pounds or 4 pounds, 6, 8, all the way up to like, you know, 30 or whatever it is. I've seen, I mean, we use stuff that's like 8, and it's like, it's really, really dense and it allows you to hold shape. It's really, really rigid.
So less air pockets?
Less air pockets, right?
So the pockets in it will be smaller because you can get some really airy stuff that they use for buoyancy, and you can do big shapes really fast.
You don't want to use that.
You don't want to use that.
No.
Really?
Yeah, because it doesn't carve nice. It doesn't. So if you needed to build bulk and then apply something to the top of that, you could do it in multiple stages.
Yeah. Okay. Now, like, so even in that, like, there's like sort of side notes. Like, if you did choose to use like a 2-part expanding foam that was like a lower density, like 2 pound or 4 pound, it's going to be a little bit more porous. It's more airy, right? You could do that. You could get, because the cost is going to be a lot less, but you can't fiberglass right onto that. What you're going to want to do is you do that, lay masking tape on that surface, and then start doing your fiberglass work on top of that, right? That's how you could do that. Yeah.
There's multiple types of expanding foam like we talked about, but there's also something that I've seen recently, I've seen at the shop too, is like insulation foam.
Oh, the foam board?
Yeah.
That stuff is good if you're not making huge pieces because it's super, super dense and then it shapes really nice. Whereas the other stuff is like if you're gonna make a 6-inch flare, it's gonna, again, back to cost, is gonna get really expensive to start stacking all that stuff because I don't think it's super inexpensive, but it's not.
The foam board?
Yeah, I think it's like $50 or $60 a sheet. and it's
for a 4x8
thick.
sheet. Like it's
So then by the time you start stacking that out, you could get hundreds of dollars into doing that. Whereas the foam, you can get that boom done in like one big pour.
Yeah,
that's why you always see the cardboard taped and guys are pouring foam in. It's just faster. But if you're doing small pieces, that stuff shapes a lot nicer.
Yeah, it's really nice to work with, and also it's readily available.
Yeah,
like if you do go to your home reno store, you can buy that stuff, and you just need They say you got to glue it together.
Yep.
And of course you can use like say Super 77. It's like a general purpose, but it's not the best. They do make a very specific spray glue for that.
Yeah, because Superfast Matt, he tried to use, if you don't know him, check him out on YouTube. It's pretty awesome. But he's building a land speed car, and he used what's it called? What type of foam before, or spray glue? But it ate the foam.
Oh, contact cement, probably.
Yeah, I think it ate the foam, and so he had to get the specific one for that purpose.
Yes.
So it doesn't.
So
eat it.
it's
and then that's the other side of that is, again, you got to protect it before you try to glass to it. Because the resin will eat the foam.
Yeah. Because it's styrene based. Yeah. So if you have to, you're digging into like chemistry here just a little tiny bit, but like polyester resin, I mean not polyester, it's polystyrene foam. And then like the standard fiberglass resin, they're comprised of similar chemicals and they will eat one another.
So you can get foam for it.
Yeah.
But it's expensive. It's like prototyping kind of stuff. We've looked into it and it's like the spread is huge. Like a block of it is like, $1,000. So
yeah.
$1,000.
Yeah. So like a similar note, like that foam, that tooling foam that they use in like big, like major fiberglass shops that are like CNC routering major body kit stuff. Like they got that tooling foam's really, really expensive. Like,
but I mean, you're going
thousands
into production.
and thousands of dollars.
So that's the other side of it. It's not something you would use for a one-off kit.
Thing, yeah.
No, this is like production stuff. Like you're getting into like really, really high end stuff. So the cost of like making a body kit at that level is upwards of $100,000 just to create the tooling. For it,
make it
wireframe.
Okay,
like you create all the perimeters, your outside edges, and then stretch it with fleece, and then resin the fleece and connect all the dots.
So for wireframe, dive into that a little bit. So you weld the like little wires,
like you identify all your outside edges.
Yep,
and then put those outside edges out and create them out of wire, like probably even TIG rod I've seen guys do. And you can hot glue it together. I've seen guys hot glue the joints together, tack weld them together. And if you create all your outside perimeters, that gives you opportunity to stretch from A to B. And what a lot of guys used to do, we call it hot tub fabrication, is you hot glue the fabric to the body, stretch it out over the wire, hot glue it there, so then it creates A to B everywhere, and then you can resin that fleece. Then it gives you a hard basis to start creating off of, and then you can, a lot of guys don't, but then you can start laying fiberglass over that.
Yeah.
And then create a proper part.
Which is necessary. Like the hard candy shell of the resined fleece, it has no structure.
No structure.
There's
just
zero structure.
A platform for you to start from.
It's nothing more than a candy shell.
So when you put that resin over that fleece, it makes it...
It absorbs it. It makes it hard.
Yeah.
And then it gives you like a basis to work off of.
Yeah.
So then after that, do you put mold release before, or like you do tape over that before?
No, because there's resin there.
Over?
You can actually just grind that and then attach right to that.
Oh, like over the fleece.
Yeah, you grind
resin
the
to
fleece
resin.
down.
You grind the fleece, create so you can get a proper mechanical connection to it, and then just leave the fleece in there if you want. If you're creating a one-off, it's a little
janky or no?
Didn't your buddy with the Mustang do it like that? That's how he did it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're gonna you wouldn't rely on that in any way to create. That's just to give you a foundation to start building your part off of. You'd want to reinforce that with fiberglass to a point that the fleece has no impact on the part at all anymore.
Yeah.
So there's limitations to shape creation doing the stretched fleece hot tub method. Like it creates like sort of like concave sort of bellies in the surface because of the weight of whatever it is. There's limitations to it. Like and we're digging into a lot of things here, but like each and every one of those things, I believe
it's based kind of comes down to the shape that you're trying to create.
Yes.
So if you were saying trying to make that classic Pandem style box flare that goes on the back, you could do that very easily with wireframe and fleece.
Really?
Because it's got the heavy peaks. You're transitioning from one peak to the next. You could create that. But if you had some big, round, organic, flowing looking thing, that would not be the how you would start it. You'd want to do that with foam.
Yeah. Or I mean, so digging into that a little tiny bit, if you're like, this is how I have to do it, is with resin and fleece, that wireframe structure that Tim was talking about, you would have to have so many more points of wireframe connection to create structure within that then your fleece lays on in order to create convex curves rather than concave curves and things like that. Like it's just a lot more work. And so all of these things that we're talking about, like I believe you should experience each and every one of these. If you have enough experience with each of them, then you know which ones to choose and why you choose it.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point. Yeah, because I didn't even think like the organic shape. It's very interesting that you mentioned the fleece, and because I almost forgot that was a pattern. Because the way I was gonna go with was I was gonna use like the sticks. I think they call it the wooden dowel rods.
Like if we were to do it in the shop, I'd be more inclined to use like 1/8 TIG rod.
1/8 what?
TIG rod.
Oh,
because it bends easy. You can make nice shapes with it, and then just tack it, and then that becomes your foundation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when you're just creating the skeleton structure, you're just using whatever is readily available and inexpensive, because it's something that is
you
underneath
coat hangers if you want to do.
Yeah,
true.
Like you just need something. But if you look at like a classic buck and then making a body panels over a buck, it's kind of the same. You're just doing it on the car. So the more points that you have to support, the more organic of a shape that you can get.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we're using metal, let's go to the metal route. What would you use to, or do you just English wheel? Like what tools would you use
even
to make
if you're doing
flare?
metal, you would create your outside perimeters, like your outside points in wireframe, and then shape your metal to those points.
But doesn't the metal have to, or the wireframe have to be like stronger because it holds the weight of the metal, or no?
Not really.
Well,
once
if
the pieces
wireframe
come together, the strength is in the piece. That's just giving you
a point of reference.
A point of reference so that you can test it. But a lot of stuff like what we do, we'd still shape it in foam and then shape the metal to the foam.
Oh.
So there's lots of different ways you can get to where you're going. It just comes down to the complexity of the design that you're trying to create.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so true. I mean, when you're dealing with metal, it gets way more complicated, right? Like you're talking specialty tools, and you don't necessarily need to have an English wheel. You could just do it with a hammer and a tree stump or whatever, but it will take you significantly longer and might not be as nice.
Yeah.
Remember that table of Bondo that you were talking about?
Yes.
Yes.
It was, because for my flares, the way I made them was I just put them on my thighs and kind of use it to give it some curve, because I didn't have any of those tools. I didn't have any tools to give it curve or English wheels or all of that.
So metal is significantly harder to work with.
Yeah.
Like significantly harder to work with. And you do have to have a little bit, like most definitely a skill set inclined to use it.
So I mean, doing it in metal is, I would say now by today's standards, is like you got to be pretty good.
Really?
Yeah, because you can't just make janky shit. Like back in the day, like I just turned down a project yesterday because I know that they just roughed it in with metal and then just mudded the shit out of it. But you can't get away with that anymore.
No,
like you can't.
No.
Like it's not a viable option anymore. Wow. But back in the day, people did it all the time. We would get things in here and have this much Bondo on it. Yeah. That's no longer acceptable.
That's a lot. That's probably how much my flares have, or my whole kit has. It's just that much Bondo. But that's very interesting. So you would say the cheapest or the most affordable route is to use?
Okay, we got to go back to the beginning. So it's like, what is your intent for this? Is this like a one-off? Is this a part that you want to create and try to produce for other people?
That's a good point.
Because there's going to be different ways that you're going to want to try to achieve it to make it easier to produce. So if you're just doing it as a one-off, I would say the cheapest way is just get yourself some cardboard and some expanding foam, shape it, and just glass her up.
And then if you're doing it because for like production, you have to make a buck first, right?
Completely different.
You have to there's a bunch of extra steps.
There's a bunch of extra steps. Because you got to think about how you're going to... We haven't even discussed like the largest shortcoming of all body kits until you start spending real money is how you're going to mount it. So creating the outward shape is fine, but now how you're going to attach it to the vehicle. So now you got to start flanging it, mounting points, and all this kind of stuff. So 90% of these cheap ass kits, and the reason they look so shit is because they have no way to mount them. And then people don't mount them because they can't create the mounts or it's beyond their ability. So it's like double side tape and wood screws and it looks like hell. Yeah. So it's like that's the worst part of all those kits. So just shape, like a lot of these guys you see shape these body kits on their cars. That's the easy part. Making it actually attach and function properly is weeks and weeks worth of work. That sucks. And like you see it all the time. We have a car in here that just came in. It's like, what, $150,000 car? Yeah. And it has this hideous piece of shit Chinese body kit on it. And 90% of our work is going to be trying to make it look like it belongs on that car. Because even if you make it outwardly nice and then you pop the hood and you got all these janky fucking brackets and it's horrible. It's so bad. Yeah. It's annoying. So like doing that, shaping it, it's very awesome. It's fast. It looks super cool. You're a YouTube star, you're a big hero, but now you got to try to make it work. Yeah. So like when Rob's drawing stuff, it's like, yeah, it looks awesome, but then you got to figure out how you're going to actually attach it to the vehicle and make it function.
Yeah, that's most definitely, like you said it right. It's the making it actually mount to the vehicle is the hardest part of all of it. And it has to be something that's thought of in the onset of as well. Like making the outside skin, the shape, the visual piece is easy, man. That's the easy part. We see so many channels out there, people doing it all the time, and they do it in all these ways that we were talking about, foam, mask and tape, wireframe, and it's amazing, and it looks so cool, but how many times have you ever actually seen that finished? Think about every channel that you've ever watched, and you're like, DIYing my own body kit, blah blah blah, and you see, they're pulling tape from point A to B, and they're creating these crazy shapes, and you're like, damn, that looks pretty sick, yeah, dude, killer. But like, they never ever show you with that car complete in a way where it's actually driven more than like from in a parking lot.
And so how do you mount these kits? For example, fiberglass, we've talked about it, tape, all of that. You finally make the fender or the bumper or whatever. I mean, what's the best way to and there's probably there's different ways depending on what you're mounting it to or attaching it to. Yeah. Like it's a different way of mounting a full bumper as opposed to mounting like flares that you made, obviously. And so how do you mount or create mounting points, or what do you do to mount these like flares, for example?
I think you got to reference OEMs. Yeah. Because there's a reason why they do everything. So if you have a fender flare on a car that has 6 different mounting points, why do you think you can do it with 2 drywall screws? Like, you can't. And if you want your shit to last and you want to be able to, like, even my car, like we did the old new kit on it, we put a lot of extra work into mounting it, like a lot of extra points. And we road tripped it to Calgary. I drive it daily, and the thing still looks great. Yeah. There's no chafing, there's no sagging, there's no cracking, there's no nothing. But we put probably, I don't know, an extra week or 2 weeks worth of work into making it OEM-style mounting. And that's the same thing you have to do with a lot of these body kits. Like you get them and they don't have any provisions for mounting. And then you run the thing for 2 months on the street and it's sagging and everything's cracking and falling off, and it's double side tape has its uses, but it's not the whole on body parts.
No, it's not
like small
enough.
pieces. And a lot of times, even when they do use double side tape, it's in addition to other fasteners.
Yeah.
So it's like, so much of this stuff just looks like shit.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of work, like flanging all these parts, putting mechanical connections in it. And then even that, you can't have paint on paint. So you got to make provisions for where your body panels come together. Otherwise they're going to chafe and you'll start pushing the paint out or all kinds of stuff.
I didn't even think about this, but like you just mentioned paint and paint. Why can't you have paint? I mean, you just said it, why? But like, what if you just have both panels joining and you just paint over both?
What?
Like,
no, you can't do that.
Why?
Because there's movement. It might even be very slight, but there's constant movement. So those parts chasing together, what happens is it starts to push, because the paint's softer than your base material. So it starts to push the paint out, and you'll see it where it's got like a little, or it'll rub, and it's moving around, and then you'll get like a chalky white line where these two panels are rubbing together, and then your stuff's junk.
But you want the panels to be like really good with fitment and all of that. But how do you ensure that they don't touch each other and have the proper
Well, if
gaps?
you look at a lot of the OEMs, like the mounting surfaces will be very slightly proud of the actual seam.
What's proud? What does that mean?
Like it'll be taller. Oh. So that gap is very, very tight, but it's not actually touching. Or they'll put a gasket or a seam or something in there to stop that. Whereas if you just go straight paint on paint, first of all, it's going to loosen off because the paint will compress and your fasteners will become loose. And then that's when it starts to move around and you'll start to see all that rubbing. And then fiberglass, once it starts moving, those holes will all start opening up because your bolt has threads on it that acts like a little saw and opens up all those holes.
Dang, dude, that's
and there's ways to like mitigate that as an issue, because that's a very real common issue.
So we'll use a lot of like threaded inserts and like riv nuts and stuff like that eliminates a lot of that kind of stuff. But even when we use a riv nut in fiberglass, we'll back it with a piece of metal and bond it to the actual kit. So that it has no opportunity for it to move. So we're taking that very localized load of that and spreading it out over a larger space.
Yeah.
So,
or you like in the you could use carbon Kevlar, as like a backing material within the body kit itself in those areas where there's rounded holes, like because Kevlar is very, very good for abrasion resistance. Like it won't oval out the hole like fiberglass will. So that's a good way of going about that as well.
Oh, that's interesting. So I'm just going to understand what you guys are saying. So to create these, use thread inserts, and then so you put like a piece of sheet metal inside, like, and you bond that sheet metal to the body of the kit.
Yeah.
And then where does the threaded insert go? Like, do you weld it on?
No, the threaded insert will be inserted into the piece of metal, and then you bond that to the kit.
Oh,
right. Okay. So now you're not relying on a screw, either a machine screw or just like a drywall type screw into fiberglass, because that fiberglass will, like you said, it moves, it'll start to open up and it'll get loose. Now we have like an actual metal, component that you're screwing into that's not fiberglass.
And the grip of the fastener is way bigger. Because if you go screw into a sheet metal, if you think of how thick your sheet metal is, it's 20 gauge, maybe 18 gauge. That gives you that much mechanical connection. It doesn't take long for it to come loose.
That's so interesting. That's stuff I would have never even thought of.
And I don't think a lot of people really think about that. Like these kit components and stuff like that, and your car in general, motorcycle, whatever. When you're even just idling while parked, that thing it's shaking, it's moving. You might not be able to see it, but there's all kinds of tolerances that need to be there to allow for each component to move and sort of live in harmony.
Said it many times, like if you want to test how much load is on your body kit, it's crazy, like hundreds, maybe even thousands of pounds. go do 85 miles an hour and stick your head all the way out the window of your car. And just...
Yeah.
That's how much weight is on your body kit at all times.
Yeah, like you hear
Even
some of
just
the
put your hand
numbers
out the window.
of functional aero on wings and all this kind of stuff. It's like, it's crazy numbers.
Yeah.
But even on the low side, it's probably 100, 200 pounds.
Yeah.
That's constantly pushing on it all the time.
That is also something I didn't think about as well. Because then also a good point you mentioned about vibrations, because I remember doing my side skirts on my Datsun. I used, I think it was maybe 20 gauge or 16 gauge for them. But over time, I noticed, first of all, like my screws were all, or the what I used to put it on the car, the screws, they were all coming loose. Yeah, I'm like, wait, where are all my screws or bolts falling apart?
You're only going into a piece of material that thick.
Makes so much sense.
So if you put a threaded insert in and help spread the load of that, it'll probably never come loose again.
Yeah, and after a while too, I also noticed, probably because of all the downforce or whatever, the wind, but I noticed the sheet metal was not thick enough. What I used, maybe I didn't put any like bead around or any of that. It was just a sheet, and so the way I attached it, you could notice it was starting to kind of like sag a little bit, and I'm like, oh shoot, this is not good.
Well, I mean, there's so many things to think about, right? I mean, the shapes that you create structure. You didn't have any structure in that area, and that's why it's sagging. But like, even when you're just driving down the road, Tim's talking like the force of air.
Yeah, acting
like
on.
that's a constant force. But then the other force that you have to think about often is the impact force, like that boom, boom,
Crashing
boom.
constantly.
Every single time you hit a bump, your car shakes, it vibrates, it's shock loading the whole car. And every single one of those things.
Like, when you see all these Instagram guys and they grab it and that's not going nowhere. That's not even remotely close to what like a shock load is.
Yeah.
Because the shock load is more akin to punching it. Mm-hmm. So it can go from like 0 to 100. Like it might be for a very brief second, but there's a lot.
Yeah. So those are things that we think about a lot. Like, you know, we use fiberglass and we do fiberglass kits often. And I actually really love fiberglass for all the, you know, the ease of which it is to use it. It's crazy what you can create with fiberglass. But all of these things that we're talking about are all major factors that you have to like go into it, know it needs to have all of these considerations so that on a street car and a street car that, you know, perhaps even has performance, you know, sort of advantages, all of that stuff is important. You have to do all of that.
What about panel bond? Because I feel like that's isn't that what OEM manufacturers use these days instead of like
panel bond is used a lot.
Yeah, panel bond is amazing.
Yeah, it truly is.
You have to use it properly. And there's a lot of little things, like nuanced things to panel bond that a lot of people don't pay attention to.
Like what?
Like there's a very specific amount of squish that you want to use on panel bond for it to be effective. So if you take a bunch of panel bond and go bang a bunch of clamps on it, it's probably not going to last.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
So there's like a lot of little things that you got to be aware of when using panel bond to make it as effective as it needs to be.
So there has to be enough gap in there for the panel bond
for it to connect to both sides. Whereas if you squeeze the shit out of it, it's not effective.
So interesting.
Yeah.
And panel bond is not an inexpensive product.
Yeah, it's expensive.
But if when used properly, it's fucking incredible.
Yeah, it's an incredible product. And we actually use it a lot for the properties in which it's for. You just have to choose the right one and use it accordingly. If you don't follow that procedure properly, you're just wasting your money and
it's not as effective as it's meant to be. Because you'll have two vastly different, like you have a car door that you can't get out. You're like, holy shit, this stuff is incredible. And then the next time somebody else is like, oh, we panel bonded it and it keeps falling off. It's because they haven't used it properly.
Yeah.
And we haven't even talked about like other materials like fiberglass. No, sorry, not fiberglass, like carbon fiber.
Carbon fiber. Carbon fiber is like a whole nother level though.
Yeah, I feel like we should probably make an episode on carbon fiber. I feel like that in itself is a whole thing because there are so many interesting things about carbon, but it's like, is it worth using carbon on things?
Probably.
Well, I mean, it comes down to those three things in which you're building it for. You know, like if it's just for aesthetics, you can get away with using carbon in certain ways to create aesthetics. But if it's for performance-based stuff, then it has a place.
This creation part of it, you wouldn't use carbon fiber. So if you had a finished kit that you're done, and then a whole nother conversation is pulling molds. Pulling molds is a whole nother thing. Then you might pull molds and then replace fiberglass with carbon fiber.
Yeah.
Because once you start playing with carbon fiber, you're not going to want to be wasting it. The resins are
very expensive.
Exponentially more expensive, and it's harder to work with unless you're just making strictly race car parts and you don't care which way. Well, no, even that, the weave's got to go certain ways to
for the engineering properties
the engineering
of it, right?
part of, to get all the strength that you wanted if you're actually using it structurally, and then you're spanning bigger things with a lot less support because it's a race car, so you want it to be lighter. So all those things come into play too. So I wouldn't think you're going to make, like, you could put bits and pieces in for accents, but you're not going to be one off in a carbon kit.
Yeah.
I'd say it's the next level when, like, hey, this kit is sick. Now we want to produce it in carbon, but you'd have to make molds and then go to carbon.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother topic. I mean, we're not specialists in composites. So there's people out there that are
way more
really good at this kind of stuff. But like even the molds that you pull off of your finished kit, they need to be of a certain level in which to be able to even use with carbon fiber
for like tolerance and stuff.
Not tolerance, but like material choices to be able to withstand like carbon fiber. It is typically you're baking it. It's a low temperature bake, but you're baking it under pressure, or like not usually. Race car stuff is going to be in an autoclave, but like
but even the chemical
under vacuum and stuff
creates heat. So it depends on how many pieces you want to make. So if you want to make 100 kits, your molds are going to be expensive because you have to use very specific products to be able to take all that thermal cycling without warping and all that sort of stuff. So it's like if you're just making one, you can get away with making one.
Yeah, you can.
But like I think when we tried to produce our kit, it was going to be $50,000 to create the molds to be able to make a proper carbon fiber part out of it.
Oh my gosh. That's wild.
And because once you get to that part, it's like if you're going to use carbon fiber for what it's actually for, you don't want excessive resin. So you're going to start vacuum bagging stuff so that you don't have more product in it than it needs to be. You want it to be as thin and strong as possible without any excess. So your molds have to be built in a very specific way to be able to do that process, which is if you're just doing wet layup and you're knocking out these shitty Duraflex kits, that's a completely different process. Like wet layup is, just go nuts. And then that's when you start seeing shitty kits because the thermal cycling of the molds, the thing's moving around, it's warping, you get shrinkage because of the cheap resins that they use.
Like that kit that
we got is like, on average, I think a rough number is like 8% shrinkage when you're using, but you can buy quality products, but they're 5 times more money that mitigate the shrinkage. So when they're pulling molds off of factory OEM parts and then using these super fast resins and low quality products, you get shrinkage. And then now like that Mercedes, like we got to build up the front like a 1/4 of an inch. But you don't want to do that because this is a performance car. So now we have to bust it, move that piece up, back glass it, do all the things and try to expand this to connect all these dots to make it look OEM, because you don't want to just slather a bunch of mud on there and make it look cool and, like
heavy.
Heavy. This is a crazy car. You don't want to make it shittier than the way it came. So, I mean, you can, but now you got panel edges that are this thick. That's not cool. So.
Yeah. And also, I just remembered from that Mercedes kit, of I think Brett was saying it, but I think they mudded, like they used resin over tape or something. Like
there's a lot of mistakes in that kit.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why that car's in our shop now, and it was pulled from another
shop.
So that's we're not going to get into that. Those are things that you don't do.
You got to create proper surfaces to be bonding stuff to, and they did not do any of them.
No.
So I'm not exactly sure what their thinking was in that particular project, but I just don't think they're very well versed in what they were doing.
Yeah, they got it. It's pretty clear that they got in over their head. They promised on something that they weren't able to actually accomplish, and they, which is ridiculous. I mean, there's so many resources out there in which you could learn all of the ways in which to sort of achieve this, even if it's your first time out. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I should probably learn. And then you dig in, you do some research,
customer car too.
Do your homework, do this, and use the products in the way that they're supposed to be used, and you will most likely have success.
Yes.
You might get a little bit invested in your time because it's first time out, but at least at the end of the day, I can stand by what I made. It's not going to fail.
Yes. And so speaking of not failing and getting it right, we're going to wrap up a little bit because I feel like
we've missed it. We got a whole section.
We've not talked about a lot of stuff.
There's a whole piece that we still got to talk about.
So we still need to talk about.
It's become like the norm, and it's like so dismissive of reality that we can't skip it.
Okay, so let's talk about it.
Okay, let's talk about it. So you guys still have time? You're good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, so what part were you talking about of like, it's like people like it's just
what's
dismissed?
super common now?
Yeah.
Is this idea that you can just 3D scan a car, print the kit, and then you're just golden. Like, that's it. It's like the easiest thing in the world. Which it's definitely a very effective way to do it, but it's not cheap and it's not fast.
And it's not very easy.
It's not very easy. No. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
So like a lot of these people that make it seem like it's super simple, it's what do you call it? Disinformation? Misinformation?
Yes. Again, what you see on the internet is not what, like, all that glitters is not gold. But it is interesting, actually, when you're talking about like 3D printing kits and all of that stuff. It makes me think of our friends at Industry Garage.
Right.
They did a Datsun 240Z. Carbon fiber full. Pretty much, they rebodied the whole thing with a body kit that Ashthorpe that helped design. Ashthorpe and Color Sponge, Carlos helped design. But so an interesting thing of what they did to that kit is they 3D printed the pieces for the kit, and then did the carbon over. They made
a mold of that, a one-off mold for a one-timer, based off of the 3D print, and then bonded that onto their car.
Yeah.
Which is totally doable.
Yeah. So it's a super effective way to do it, but you need a 3D scanner to create your foundation. Yes. And then you have to create all of this in space, what you want it to look like. Then you have to surface it, and then you have to create it, break it into pieces in which you can print it. So each print would say probably, like, we have a pretty fast printer. So I'd say each section would probably take a day and a half to print. So how many pieces do we have in a body kit?
That's a lot.
Like 40 pieces. I'd say it'd probably take you realistically a month to print a kit.
I feel more than that.
Probably more than a month. Now you're starting to see these huge printers that are super fast, but they're not super fine. So they're pretty rough and they print fast, but those printers are $100,000.
Yeah,
they're crazy expensive.
And you can get that. You can farm that work out. Like I know SEMA,
but even the cost is like $16 per like cubic. I can't remember what the dimension is, but it still costs you probably $1,500 or $2,000 to have that piece printed.
That's insane.
So like if you're going into production, that's part of your production cost, but as a one-off for yourself, right away you're just $8,000 into printing. Like that's more than probably what you're trying to emulate. So that part of it is like hugely time consuming, so it's not happening overnight. And then you still got to attach and bond. The nice thing about 3D printing is you can create those attachment points into CAD. The piece CAD. So that helps you huge because you have those two surfaces to work from, and when you're meshing them together, and then you still got to body work that piece to perfection as though it's a finished part. Once it's on there, pull a mold of it and then lay whatever composite you want to do within that mold and then go back to the car.
So the alternative is to like, and it works well for like maybe race car stuff, drift cars and stuff, is you can have like end use 3D printed body kit. You could do that. People do it. you could do that. You just have to use the right print materials, the filaments, and it needs to be designed and printed accordingly. But like that's another option as well.
But they're not intended to last.
No,
they're more or less disposable.
Yeah.
And I feel like for the 3D printed parts, you can also do like CFD, what's it called? Analyze what it would take for like loads and all of that. So I feel like that's another benefit of probably you can do all of those
doing all this
simulations
digitally. Yes.
Yeah. So you can know if the tabs and everything that you make can withstand the amount of force that is exerted on the body.
You could get into it like that. I mean, you're talking like now you're getting into like an educated skill set. Like we got Alex on our team, and he's a mechanical engineer, and he can do like stress load analysis and stuff like that on things that we design and create. But this all comes at a cost. Like, is a DIYer gonna do that?
Yeah, it depends.
Probably
the
not.
amount of levels and computing power and equipment that you need is way outside of normal people. Like our stuff is pretty entry level at this point because we're trying to evolve and learn at a natural pace, and it's still quite expensive.
Yep.
So it's a lot, and then a lot of people think that you just 3D scan something and that's it.
Yeah, that's a
huge misconception. It's like, can't you just 3D scan it? It's like, okay, 3D scanning is essentially like taking a picture of it. There's so many levels after that. And you don't just talk into the machine and be like, make me a crazy body kit. And it just comes out. Like it's a lot. So a lot of times you see these people that are doing it and they present it in a very casual manner. Ultimately, it's ending up in production in some place. Or there's 5 or 6 people involved that are trying to make it happen for content or whatever else it is, but it's not cheap. Like if you're paying for these people's time, it's like you're going to get a lot of money into it before you get a finished part. Like crazy.
Something I just thought of, it's still related to the topic, but designing the kit, you can use free resources like AI stuff. Actually, I was playing with some AI, I think yesterday, on design or potential designs for my kit, for my Datsun. And it came up with some interesting looks. Actually, I'm just going to pull up the things I can show you. It was actually pretty cool. So let's see, where's my drive? Come on. Oh.
Yeah, there's a lot of resources nowadays that we can use. Like it's an amazing time.
But like stuff like that, like it comes up with like, and I'll put a picture on the screen if you're watching this, but it comes up with like different, like depending on what prompt you give it. Yeah, it's like each one looks different, so you can also kind of see what, like, I don't know, also what wheels you can go with, because another thing that we haven't even talked about is like other choices like wheels and all of that, because that also dictates what type of body kit you can have, if it's going to look good, if it's not, all of that. And so I feel like AI it's so cool and it's so easy to do. Literally just type in a few prompts and boom, it spits out a little
you can definitely
image.
Do that.
It's not very precise and you can't really tell what exactly it's going to do, but it gives you like a few options that you can potentially work off.
You can get into something pretty quickly using AI like that.
Yeah.
It's definitely not the be all to end all.
No, obviously.
And like you would take, say, that image.
Yeah.
So many like the functionality of
it just
the problem with so many computer renders is it's all style based. There's no functionality to it because there's no suspension travel. There's no nothing. Like you got exhaust pipes fucking cooking your windshield and doing all this wild shit. It's like, so that's the other side, is like once you design it, you got to work it backwards and make sure the thing's going to work and function. And if it's going to go down the road.
Yeah.
But it's pretty crazy. Like it's inspiring and motivating that you see all this potential and then it's just working it backwards to make it work.
Yeah. And it always comes down to like, and we talk about it a lot, is like, what is your plan? Like, what is your intention? Do you want to just look at it? Because if that's the case, you can have like zero gap and like just make it absolutely
slammed,
phenomenal looking. Like it can be just awesome. You could have your exhaust looking shooting right at your window if you want to, because it looks sick. True. But like honestly, that kind of stuff, even if your intention was to do that, at some point in time you're gonna get tired of looking at it and you're gonna be like, I'm gonna fire this thing up and just go for a rip.
and then you break everything.
And then you go, oh shit, my bank account's telling me not to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang, we have been going on for a while. This is probably one of our longest podcasts.
Yeah, we're only just scratching the surface a lot of this.
There's a lot that we didn't even talk about. Like I had a whole list that I did not even reference. Like literally, there's like 20 pages of, not 20 pages, 2 pages of stuff. Because we also didn't talk about like combining materials. If you're combining like carbon and fiberglass, all of that stuff, and like more resources for people, all of that. So maybe we'll make this another episode. So
we'll have to do a part 2.
Yeah. So if you want to see, or if you have any questions on building body kits yourself, because Tim and Rob have the expertise or the experience from building and learning from mistakes and things not to do and all of that, like you've just heard, reach out to us at media@trickfactory.com or hit us up on Instagram and suggest or give some questions that you might have. And Instagram, TikTok, all of the things. We will see you guys later. Thank you guys for listening, for watching. Bye.